Japan are unsurprisingly the 2025 FISU World University Games team champions. Canada had a historic competition, and the high bar final was reminiscent of the Paris Olympic Games and not necessarily in a good way. For those new here, I'm Kensley, the host of Neutral Deductions, a podcast all about men's gymnastics. Today, I'm joined by New Zealand's Thomson. This is episode 77, where we recap the 2025 FISU World University Games. So first and foremost, welcome, Lewis. Thank you so much for being here. Would you mind telling all of the people who are listening here at Neutral Deductions who you are, what your background is, and why you wanted to be on this podcast?
First of all, I want to say thank you so much for having me on. I'm a massive fan of the show, massive fan of anyone trying to push men's gymnastics. It's just a space there's not enough out there, and what you're doing is very much needed. And Sam Oldham and anyone else that's doing media on men's gymnastics, I just appreciate it so much. So big fan of the show. I'm just a big fan of gymnastics from New Zealand. I compete over here in New Zealand, and I just wanted to come on and have a chat about these uni games because I think I enjoyed it just as much as Kensley did. That's basically it.
It was quite a good competition. It was a really interesting competition. There were some surprising falls and some hilarious splats, which we'll definitely get into, which I think makes, gymnastics all the more interesting. So I would say going into this competition, I typically try and put out some sort of preview of what's going to happen, but we did not actually get the start list for this competition until I think about 12 hours before the competition. So we had no idea how to preview. We had no idea which athletes were doing all around, which ones weren't. I think I had even previewed that I thought Felix Dulcie of Canada and Luke Whitehouse of Great Britain were going to be some of the favorites for the bronze medal for the all-around, and they didn't even end up competing all around here. So that was a little bit of a wash there. But even still, without that information, I think we did have the Japanese team. And so going into this competition with Hashimoto Daiki and Oka Shinosuke on that team, we pretty much knew that no one was going to be challenging the Japanese team going into this competition. So can you walk us through a little bit of what happened in day one? There were the 3 subdivisions, and what stood out to you on that first day of what it was team finals / qualifications?
The first day, I think the standout was definitely Canada coming out with, I think pretty much all of the top guys from Canada were there, which was, they had a really great showing and ended up coming second overall. But I have to shout out my New Zealand guys in Subdivision 3. I woke up at 4:30 to watch them, and they were definitely the highlight for me. Just talking to them, they had a great day. They didn't have any falls, and they were really, really happy to be there amongst the best gymnasts in the world.
Yeah, I think for me too, Canada was really stellar, and they've been, I think up and coming is maybe the wrong word to use, but they have been on the rise. I think really their 2023 Worlds performance, where they came in and they out-qualified China going into that team final, and they've had this solid group of guys who have continued into this next Olympic cycle for the most part, and they're just getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and it's been really exciting to watch them. But I would say the majority of the action at this competition did come in day 2, for good and for bad. And we'll get into a little bit of what happened with all of the injuries that happened there. So I would say the really hard part of gymnastics is just how dangerous the competition is. And unfortunately, there was a really, really severe injury, which, if you haven't heard, Italy's Lorenzo Bonicelli was very seriously injured. In fact, he was so seriously injured that the entire Italian team withdrew from the rest of the competition, which is unheard of. I can't think of another competition where an entire team has withdrawn in its entirety. And the rings routine was not shown in competition, so we were able to get some reports from people who were there live. So if you are really sensitive to learning about an injury, I would suggest jumping forward about a minute or two. So what ended up happening with Lorenzo is he was on still rings and he went for his triple back dismount. And by the accounts that were given from the people in the competition venue, his grip slipped. And so as he was going for his triple back dismount, he was not able to complete the rotations. And unlike when you're twisting, if you don't complete the rotations, you're probably maybe going to tear a knee. Well, if you're doing a flip and you don't complete the rotations, you end up landing on your neck versus on your feet. And that's exactly what happened to him. And from the reports we have inside the arena, he was actually not able to move. I don't know if that was because he physically couldn't or if the medical staff had advised him not. We don't know that in particular. But we ended up getting an update the next day from the FIG MTC member, Steve Butcher, who was there. And he said, please keep Italian gymnast Lorenzo Bonicelli in your thoughts and prayers as he recovers from a significant neck injury on his still rings dismount at the World University Games. Several of you have asked me about his condition after seeing me judging and as apparatus supervisor on still rings. I'm sorry I could not respond sooner without confirmation. Lorenzo is in a medically induced coma after surgery last night. It will take 10 or more days to know his condition. The entire gymnastics family is pulling for Lorenzo to recover. The next day, we got an update from the Italian Gymnastics Federation that said Lorenzo Bonicelli's condition is stable. His life is not in danger. He remained alert after the accident until surgery and was awakened from his medically induced coma to check for signs of neurological function and is showing some signs of recovery. He is in the intensive care unit, and a hospital spokesperson explained that his family was with him and his teammates were able to say goodbye before returning to Italy. So we wish Lorenzo the absolute best in his recovery. And of course, we're hoping for a full recovery for him. But this is a really serious situation. So, Louis, I'm curious for you, because my initial thought after understanding the severity of this is I wondered, do you think the FIG might change what I'm going to call the dismount bonus effectively, where doing the more difficult dismount at the end of the routines gives you equally the difficulty skill as the element group? And I wondered, do you think that they might change this and revert back to having just a normal element group where everything is worth 0.5 after seeing the severity of this injury? Or do you think that they'll keep moving forward as is?
I think you bring up a really good point, and it was just a really sobering moment. I feel like we haven't had a really big injury or era like this in quite a while. Like that's been in the forefront of everyone's minds. So I do think you are right that it will prompt maybe a discussion about where FIG is leading in that direction, because I mean, I see people undercut triple backs and you don't really think about it too much, like, oh, I just undercooked it a little bit, I hope his ankles are all fine. But it's a reminder that it is a very dangerous sport at times, and it was just very sobering for me. And I had a friend there watching live, and it's just very heartbreaking. Definitely hoping for a full recovery.
Yeah, I think with the triple back on still rings, like this is certainly not the first injury that we've heard of, even this Olympic cycle. But typically what we're seeing is the under rotation where people are putting their hands down at the same time and actually ending up with broken hands. And this is obviously a significantly more severe injury and under rotation. And I've also wondered, okay, if the FIG isn't going to maybe take steps to change the code of points, are they going to maybe allow having a spotter? And I can't say for sure that having a spotter would have changed the outcome of this, but if we're going to be allowing gymnasts to do the most difficult skill at the point where they are most tired in the routine, do we not need to have the most safety net possible available for these athletes?
I 100% agree with you. And if you're pushing for the most difficulty, you should have the most safe parameters around that as well. If that's an extra mat, sting mat, 10 centimeter mat in there as well, I think it's definitely needed.
Yeah, so we will keep you updated as we know more about Lorenzo's condition. And we also sincerely hope that the FIG looks to reevaluate what safety measures can be put in place to hopefully prevent these type of accidents from happening in the future. Moving on to some other aspects of competition from day 2, I want to talk a little bit about the U.S. team. The U.S. sent a really interesting delegation, I would say, to this competition. It definitely was not necessarily the top US guys. I think there were some, like Patty Hoops, definitely the top pommel horse worker, like he's the 2-time reigning NCAA champion. And then you have some other athletes that could have gone, like Frederick Richard, who won the all-around title, who spoke in an interview with me last week and said part of the reason that he didn't go was the proximity to the US championships, which are taking place next week. And it was I was surprised at some of the scores that were coming up. There were only 2 14 scores in the entire team final. It was Patty on pommel horse and Tate Costa on pommel horse. So I'm curious, what were some of your perspectives of the US team?
I think Tate definitely had a good showing. I think very, 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 very clean, very great style. I think Ollie loved his stuff as well out there, especially in that floor final. Um, I didn't get to see a lot of the qualifications for the USA, just for the timings that it was shown. And I couldn't find the replay of subdivisions 4 to 6 on the FISU website. Don't know why that was, but
Yeah, I agree
yeah.
that they only put some of the replays up, and thankfully I was able to actually watch that one live, but there were some other things that I had wanted to go back and double check and see if I missed something, and I wasn't actually able to find the replay. So hopefully that's something that will be rectified in the future. But a couple of the US guys did make a few finals. So Colt Walker made the all-around final outright, with Kai Uemura being the first reserve. Tate Costa made the floor exercise final, and then Patty also made the pommel horse final. But I think the star of the show from that team qualification / team final was definitely Japan. There were some real surprises for me as well. I would say the 2 biggest surprises from their performance was Oka Shinosuke being 2 per country out of the all-around final. So the reigning Olympic champion, 2 per country out of the all-around final, like mind-blowing. And then also Daiki Hashimoto got a 14 on rings, and I'm like, what universe are we living in that Daiki Hashimoto can get a 14 on rings?
I feel like he's like Thanos collecting all the Infinity Stones, and rings was like the last one, and now he's got them all. I just remember at the last quad, when you see all the scores come up in all-around competition, between him and Zhang, there was always like 14, couple 15s, and then he'd always have like that high 13 on rings, and you're like, okay, that's where Zhang like kind of has the up on him, but 14s, I've seen a couple 14s at this competition, so very exciting for his all-around in the future.
Yeah, I would say he is unequivocally the best all-arounder in the world right now. Like, this code of points is really suiting his gymnastics. He seems like he's maybe not dealing with any serious injuries at the moment, and we'll get into what his all-around performance was in finals, but his qualification score here, the 85, I think 173 that he got in qualifications, was the second highest in the world right now, behind his own score that he scored earlier in Japan. So to own the 2 top all-around scores in the world, I think just speaks to his consistency and his difficulty and his ability to execute. So with that all being said, the team final results from the 2 days of qualification / team finals were Japan in first, followed by Canada, which was this historic first ever medal for them. And then in third, Switzerland, who is on a roll because they also got a European medal earlier this year, and they're just bringing home hardware left and right. A couple other things that I wanted to point out, just 2 things, is I think we have to give Best Scale Award to Unai Begori of Spain. The way he can just like kick his leg up immediately into the Y scale and hold it, and he has so much flexibility. It's really impressive, and everyone should have to watch that scale, in my opinion, to learn how to do it correctly. Did you have any favorite scales or any floppy scales that you enjoyed?
That was definitely my favorite. To have the confidence to kick your leg up like that and just like know that you're not going to be like doing a little stumble or anything is, I could never do that in my routine. I found it so impressive.
Yeah, and for me, the other thing that I really wanted to point out was Mattia Pifferati from Switzerland. He, I believe, has not done all around in close to 3 years, and he did all around here and ended up making the all around final. So kudos for him as well. So moving on to the all around final, Hashimoto going in was certainly the favorite. If he repeated what he did in qualifications, even if he had a fall, no one was going to touch him. So going in, it was Hashimoto Daiki, Kawakami Shohei, and William Amard of Canada. Now, Hashimoto wasn't exactly able to repeat his performance. He did have a little fall on high bar on his skill, his Takimoto to half to Lucan combination, he fell on that. And so his score was a little bit down from qualifications, but you actually ran the number of all of his performances across the competitions. And what was the all-around total if you had used all of his best scores?
Just from this uni games alone, we have an 86.666.
Oh my gosh.
Which
do you think we're going to see an 86 this year at World Championships?
I believe so. If Daiki's feeling healthy and I mean he's looking ridiculously consistent, so I think that 85.197 from the that was the quals, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I think if he made his high bar routine in finals, he would have been very, very close, because missing that tack half to Liukin misses the connection, it misses the Liukin, it gives him a full. Like, there's quite a lot of points just in that one mistake, and I think he would have been very close, if not would have been hitting that 86 if he had hit that.
Yeah, absolutely. There were some surprising and interesting moments in all-around final. I would say the first of which was USA's Kai Uemura showed up to compete his first event in a t-shirt. And I have a lot of questions about how this happens, because if you read the technical regulations, which anyone who has listened to this show or listened to me on Gymnastic for the past 10 years, you know I will dig into a handbook or a technical regulations. And everything that I've been able to read says that all reserve athletes are supposed to be ready to compete up until like the first person, like the end of the warm-up period. And I just don't know, how are you not in your kit? And so can you help brainstorm with me, like, how does this happen where an athlete shows up in a t-shirt?
I have no idea. I was so confused when I saw this. I was sitting with my mate and we were just like, is he warming up? Did he just raise his hand or something? Is he doing a Friedrich Flips like new uniform change? Like, what is this? I was like, maybe he's like was fourth reserve and they just shoved him in at the last minute, but no, he was first reserve. I would assume if you're first reserve, you'd have your unit with you. I don't know. It was pretty shocking to me.
Yeah, we've seen it in an unfortunate manner. We've seen it so many times where an athlete is warming up and the reserve has to be brought in. It happened to Jessica Gadarova at 2023 World Championships, where she was just warming up in the back gym. Accidentally something popped in her knee, and they substituted in the reserve for that spot. And I don't know how this happened. I would love to get more information and share it with the podcast listeners, but he did end up getting the neutral deduction for not having his proper uniform for this competition. So hopefully in the future, everyone knows that you should stay in kit until the very last moment. I will say there was not anything particularly interesting or shocking, I think, in terms of the order of how the athletes ended up ranking. The athletes who were top 3 in quals ended up being the athletes who were top 3 in finals. I will say the funniest part for me of this competition was right before Hashimoto went for his high bar routine. Ollie Hogman, who was commentating, said, "Oh, crikey, it's Daiki." And I could not stop laughing at that amazing thing. Did you pick up on that, Lewis?
I did. I feel like you could do a highlight reel of just Ollie's crazy comments that he makes. Oh, crikey, it's Daiki is definitely like one of the all-time favorites for me. I definitely had to go back and watch that. I wrote that down instantly. Like, I know we're going to chat about this on the podcast.
I did. I was like, that is one of those memorable moments where just that bit of commentary makes you remember the athlete and the performance and the importance of it. And it's such a small thing. And it's something I've like tucked away in my memory for when I do commentating as well.
I think it's quite funny just thinking about Ollie must have like thought of that ahead. Like, he didn't just come out with, oh, crikey, it's Daiki. So to have that like formulated, like, okay, when Daiki goes up at some point, maybe I'll give it, oh, crikey, it's Daiki, is so funny to me.
I know it could be something that he has used before, but typically I am on site for most competitions that he is commentating. So I actually don't get to listen to his commentary that often. So maybe it's something that everyone else has heard before, but for me, it was a first. And just, yeah, an absolute delight. Louis, I know both of us had actually written down and made notes about Jessie Moore of Australia's performance. And I think typically when it comes to Australian gymnastics, from the perspective of the world, like people obviously know Heath. Heath has made his own name for himself. But I feel like people are not talking enough about how good Jessie Moore is in this moment. So what for you stood out about him?
I think you've brought it up perfectly. No one is talking about Jessie Moore. And I think it's just because he's been so close to having these all around showings on a world stage, but is never quite there. Like, I remember at the Commonwealth Games a couple years back, he had a bit of an injury, but he was really starting to break out then. But post injury, he's come back, and his scores, his difficulty scores are there. He's like got beautiful clean lines, and I believe he could be up there with maybe just below Oka, like near Shohei, like the 83, maybe even 84 type of area. But he's definitely going to have his breakthrough soon, and I think it'll be a shock to the world that I think he could easily be top 5 in the world all around, and I'm really looking forward to him getting that recognition and having that good all around day one day, hopefully soon.
Yeah, for me, he is so close on that bubble, and I think he has gone 83 once this year. And I think he will, if he does what he is capable of, will be rotating with that top group of all-arounders at the World Championships. And I think people are going to look at that and be like, who is this kid? But you need to know his name, and he didn't even get his full difficulty here in the all-around. He broke 80 in this new code of points, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he had a fall and also didn't get credit for a couple of elements, correct?
Yeah, he missed his. He does like the Son one handle element on pommel into a flop series, which is a big skill. I think that's a F or somewhere around an F. So he had a full and a 0.6 there. And then on the high bar, he missed his Coleman as well. So another full, and he didn't attempt the Coleman again. So that's around 3 marks just there in those 2 mistakes. And that would bump him up a lot. So, yeah.
Yeah. And for the US audience, who is the majority of the people listening in Neutral Deductions, that is 83 is what Fred Richard was scoring at the NCAA championships. If that puts you in a good comparison of where he is scoring right now. So I am really excited to continue watching his journey, and I think he's going to shock a lot of people. For me, one of the things that I was actually really interested to see was Colt Walker of the US upgraded his parallel bars, I believe, about half of a point from qualifications to all-around finals, which is a 5.7. And I'll get into this a lot more next week when we dive into the US National Championships and how people can automatically make that world team. But a 5.7 on parallel bars, if that is performed, makes a gymnast eligible to automatically lock their spot onto the world championship team. So that's a big, big routine for him. I'm glad he was able to maybe get some of the nerves out and be able to try that in Germany. And that will be something to look forward to in New Orleans next week. Moving on to event finals, floor exercise. What more is there to say than, of course, the champion was Luke Whitehouse. I mean, he has been nothing but stellar this year.
Absolutely stunning. I was sitting with my friends. We were just at a competition a few hours out from home, and a lot of these gymnasts don't know, they're not as much of a gym nerd as I am. And I was just sitting there like, you have to stay up. I know we've got a competition tomorrow, but you have to stay up till midnight. Just watch this one routine. Like, you won't be disappointed. And they were all pleased to see Luke do his massive triple, like his massive 6-1 difficulty routine. They were all amazed, and it was just so beautiful.
I have seen Luke's floor routine so many times. I've seen it in person at the Olympics. I've seen it at the European Championships. And it still, to this day, shocks me when he does that triple so sky high out of a round off. I'm like, where's the back handspring? How are you generating that much power and height just from a round off? It's incredible.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to jump to third right now, but Jeonyeon Moon, was it?
Yes.
He had an amazing routine. Like I didn't know him too well, but opening with a double twist to a double pike and then a back 2.5 to a double front, which is both 0.2 connection, so both really big passes. Man, he's a powerhouse, and I think it really shows Luke's difficulty in that he was still zero point 0.5 off of Luke's difficulty with such a massive routine. I think that was a good comparison for the guys that I was watching with as well to understand how insanely difficult Luke Whitehouse's routine is.
It really is a thing of beauty, and he makes it look so easy. And not only that, I spoke about this at length after the European Championships, but he has put so much energy into his floor transitions as well. And I think oftentimes when you have guys who do these really big tumbles, they are so lazy with their corner transitions. And it feels like he puts as much energy into these like leaps as he does doing the triple back. And that to me is what makes his routine so like such a standout. But you know who's actually not that far off from him was Oka Shinosuke. This was a little bit surprising for me. I think he's definitely down on difficulty from Luke, but he is so clean aside from his double front. His hips are open when he's tumbling in a straight position. He really minimizes his landing deductions a lot. And it brings up a really interesting point for me. So in the US, Charlie Larson is one of the, I would say, up and coming stars on floor, someone that people are really looking forward to. But he actually doesn't have a double front skill in his floor routine. And he takes that element group, we'll call it a deduction. So he gets the 0.3 versus the 0.5 for not having a D element skill in that element group. And when I was looking at Oka's routine, I was thinking, man, he's probably getting 0.5 off on that double front, 0.4 to 0.5 off because he has a massive hop. He's definitely like, got some form issues. Would it be worth maybe substituting it out and taking the element group deduction? So I'm curious, like, as you help athletes form routines, like, what do you think of the trade-off there?
Well, as someone that competes front full double front, I would know that I would definitely be better off a lot of the time not doing that and just competing something simpler. But I would hope that hopefully closer to the end of the quad, maybe by World Championships, everyone's a bit more comfortable with those skills. I think having the 0.2 off, well, 0.3 instead of 0.5 in difficulty score is quite big. And also the amount of skills you can do, like Charlie Larson only really has, he's amazing at his double back layouts and back tumbling, but he can only do 4 of those elements in his routine. So he still has to fill up those other spots with like the back 1.5, punch full connection and those sorts of things. So I think it's more than just a 0.2 in kind of the D score that in that way. But I definitely get what you're saying because, yeah, I've seen over here at home as well, lots of people trying that front full double front, and it definitely does incur a lot of deductions.
Yeah, I guess the final thing that we'll talk about in terms of the floor final was this podium. So Luke Whitehouse, Oka Shinosuke, and Youngwoo Moon was not the original podium. So can you explain what happened here and why the podium got flipped?
Well, as I was watching, I'm a gym nerd, so I love to calculate the D score as I go. And I'm like, yes, he got that 0.1 stick bonus. Jeonyeon Moon got the stick bonus. And we had a great routine from, was it Dimitri Pitinen? And he nearly stuck every single pass. He just had a really small shuffle on the landing. I was really happy for him. Like, this is probably like a podium level type of routine. Like, it was super clean. And he was sitting in third, and then Jeonyeon Moon got his stick bonus awarded again, which he should have been awarded. And that bumped him over Dimitri, which is where he should have been. But I always think it's a shame when Dimitri did a good routine and he saw himself in third and then got bumped out just because the judges had forgotten to give an extra 0.1 where they should have in the past.
You want the right score to be given at the right time, and you want the judges to get everything right at the right time. But I'm definitely thankful that there are options to inquire and make sure, because judges are only human and they do miss things. So I do believe this is the correct podium, but that's just a little bit of the behind the scenes of what happened on floor. So moving on to pommel horse, Mamo fell. So does anything else matter in this final?
So gutting, so gutting. I mean, I think he'll have so many more moments. I mean, for years to come. So I'm not too fussed. Like, let other people have a shine every now and again. It'll be fine. But I think from the qualifications, the as much as Japan was dominant in the all-around final, this is definitely where Armenia was so dominant in the pommel final. 1, 2, 3. They're so far ahead of everyone else, and they're so young. I don't know what they're doing in Armenia. We definitely need a deep dive documentary into what they're doing over there.
It's unbelievable. And I believe this is I want to say it's the first fall for either of the two Armenian youngsters in major competition this year. And I was like, these kids, they never fall. It is unbelievable. And so I really thought like they're a shoe-in to go 1-2. Unfortunately, Memo did have a fall, but Hamlet Manukian, who I would say is more of the pommel horse star, if you had to pick one, just the most impressive routine. His kicks on the scissors are way above the shoulders. Like, you're not guessing, like, did he make it over shoulder height? Like, there is zero question there. The extension in his hips on the circles, I mean, he is so incredibly flat. And how does he fly up to the dismount? I'm trying to think if I've ever seen a gymnast fly up that quickly and that smoothly. And I don't know if I have. Like, is there anyone that you could compare to that you think that dismount is so similar to?
I think you definitely see clips of people in training when they show their best ever dismounts, like showing highlights in their trainings. You definitely see maybe close to that, but as someone that completes that myself, I don't even know why I try to compete at handstand dismount, because he just makes it look so easy, and I know it's not.
It's not. And when you see the other best in the world who are in these finals with him, even the slightest hesitation is so much more noticeable. It's like when you have someone on parallel bars go after Zhou Jingyuan and you think, like, they normally, you would say, like, oh, they have really good height on their, on their front 1 1/4, or their bobs are. And then you see Zhou Jingyuan do it and you're like, oh, maybe there's still more to give. It's so incredible. And Hamlet got a 9.333 execution on, this is not a vault. This is on pommel horse. And it is the highest execution on pommel horse to date of anyone who has competed thus far. So this kid is my number one pick for gold at the World Championships later this year, assuming he doesn't get injured. This is the gymnast to be right now.
Most definitely. And to have less than a tenth off of each skill is ridiculous, especially in a pommel routine where you're essentially doing a lot more than 8 skills with all the circles in between. So, yeah, the judges' pens were not busy during that routine.
They were not. I felt like for second place, having Hashimoto Daiki come back and get silver, this to me felt like, okay, Hashimoto is back. He's had I would say a good bit of struggles on pommel horse over the last couple of years. And this routine I felt was one of the more fluid that we had seen him, one of the more confident we had seen him. And it was nice to have him back on a pommel horse podium.
I definitely agree with you. And especially since at the last University Games, this is where he had come off in the all-around final, or was it in the qualifications? Either one of those. And it was good for him to have that comeback 2 years later and show, I can do it. I can do it on the big stage at the Uni Games. And I did not have him on my podium of this pommel final. I always look at the pommel specialist first. I don't like Daiki being an all-rounder. You don't think of him as maybe you think it was a high bar specialist as well, but a pommel specialist? Wow. Very impressed.
Yeah, same for me. And then rounding out the podium here was Patty Hoops of the USA. I have a lot of questions about his score, to be completely honest. So in qualifications, I want to say he got somewhere in the 14.55 range, somewhere in there, that range. And his bazooka was super, super messy in quals. And he was like even making fun of himself on Instagram, being like something about like the goofy first half of his routine. And then the finals routine on the video looks significantly cleaner and it got a lower score. So I was a bit confused by the scoring on his routine. And I'm curious if you noticed that or if you have a different opinion.
I didn't have the qualifications right next when I was watching it, so I didn't pick it up as much. So
yeah, it was something that I went back and particularly watched just because I remember that he had said on his Instagram, like, oh, that was like a goofy first half. And so I went back and watched the posting and I agree with him. The first half of qualifications was a little messy and this one I thought was much improved. So anyway, glad he made the podium and I think he was rewarded for his hard work. I will say he has upgraded since the NCAA championship. So most of the season he's been competing a 5.9. He was competing a 6.0 here. And I believe there is still a little bit more to come. Moving on to still rings, I titled this section, Not That Liu Young. So if you were like me and you looked at the start list and you were like, oh, Liu Young's competing, no one is going to touch him, like he's going to win. I don't always know the age of the gymnasts who are competing. And so the Liu Young that we all know, the two-time Olympic champion, he is aged out of the university game system. So this was not Liu Young, Olympic champion, that was competing, but another Liu Young who is also quite good at rings who was competing. So if you're wondering, why did Liu Young all of a sudden get second and why was his difficulty down? That's why. But Lewis, can you walk us through the rest of what happened in the still rings final?
We had another beautiful routine from, would you remind me his name? Xiong Hei?
Liu Hei, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Liu Hei. We had a beautiful routine. We definitely saw a lot more difficult dismounts throughout the whole thing. We had some double layouts stuck cold by Liu Young. Actually, it was so beautiful. That was one of my favorite dismounts of the whole games. And rounding out the China first second, we had Canada in third with William with another standout routine. He had a whole standout games, and I was very pleased to watch that because it's always good to see gymnasts with a lot of energy, with a lot of vigor when they win, and that was definitely William Emard after all his wins, and especially after this rings one too.
Yeah, I thought this was probably the most straightforward final that there was. Not a lot of drama here, not a lot of complaints. So yeah, China going 1-2 on still rings and William Emard, really Canada's star of the show this particular championship. So moving on to vault, where we had another Chinese star take the vault title. I would say this was a little bit of a surprise because Nazar Chepurny of Ukraine, who has definitely been consistently one of the best vaulters in the world this year, he came in first place from qualifications into the vault final. He did not medal at all this entire championships. And Chen Zhilong of China first did a Rise Guang, and what was so impressive to me was that he had his chest mostly upright. It's like still a little bit forward, but most people when they do this vault, like their chest is like at their knees. And I was like, oh, there's separation between his chest and his knees. And so I thought that was really impressive. And then after his second vault, he was like actually encouraging the crowd to clap, which it feels very not like Chinese gymnastics to me. They're typically, I feel like, a little bit more like poised or neutral, I would say. And so that was actually really nice and fun to see.
I loved that too, and especially when he was just sitting down in that kind of podium area on those chairs, he was giving some waves to the camera and just looks like he was having a good time with the people beside him, and I was really pleased for him as well to look like he was enjoying it out there.
And I just want to ask, how are you jogging into this vault? I don't understand.
Absolutely insane. I personally train a cuz full twist, and I am sprinting the heck out of that runway. And when I watch these guys just do their little jogs, okay, and then last three steps, I might put a little bit more run up into this, and they just bounce so high, land so beautifully. Like it's not just him as well. Like Zhao Ruting from China as well. I think he doesn't even get to a run. He just jogs the whole way and does this beautiful, beautiful cuz double twist. And I'm so jealous every time. It's incredible.
Yeah, I also don't understand. It is so interesting to me how they are able to generate that much power. So rounding out the vault podium was Luca Murabito of Switzerland. And then Kim Jae-hong of Korea was able to round out the podium in third place. Moving on to parallel bars. So parallel bars is the perfect example of why I at times hate the two per country rule because they qualified top 4 into the parallel bar final and only 2 of them were able to compete. And I feel like all 4 of them should have been able to battle it out for that podium. For me, the interesting comparison, especially, was actually looking at Tsunogai directly to Oka. So you have these 2 parallel bar workers from the same country, and for me, Tsunogai, his front 1.25 to me rivals that of Zhou Jingyuan. And I know a lot of people may be like, that's blasphemy. But the way he is able to catch into long hang, and it's quiet. Like that's what is so reminiscent to me of Zhou Jingyuan's bar routine is he doesn't slam his body onto the bar when he's catching things. He also had a 9.0 plus E score, and it just, for me, he is definitely one of the top bar workers in the world. And I think from the Japanese selection procedures, we feel pretty confident that this performance is going to help lock him onto that world team for the World Championships. Then you have Oka, and of course, he's getting silver. He's great on this apparatus. He's an Olympic medalist here. But watching them directly back to back, I felt like he was missing height on some of his elements, like his bobs are. It just felt like really low. And when he would re-grasp the bar, it was so clunky and loud when he landed. And did this stick out to you at all?
Definitely that Behovsa, it just looked like there was no hit or anything, but it was just so over the P bars. And especially the landing as well wasn't, I don't think it was perfect either, but yeah, you could definitely tell a difference between Oka and Sunokai from what you're saying in this apparatus final. I could definitely see that.
I would say the other thing for me that really stood out from this final as a positive thing was looking at Moon of Korea on who ended up winning the bronze medal. But when you often see gymnasts in the tuck position, they have some sort of like knee separation or something of that. And for him, he was in this tucked, tiny little ball on his bell and on his double front dismount. And I was like, oh, this is what beauty and perfection in gymnastics looks like.
I always like when I don't really know a gymnast too well. I didn't really know much about him going into this competition, so it's always nice to get surprised sometimes and not know what you're going to see. Like I look at a Daiki high bar routine, I know all the steps he's going to take, but going into that bow and just beautifully executing these super powerful moves, I was really pleased to see that, and he definitely stood out to me a lot at this Uni Games.
Now, in the parallel bar final, I would say there were some opportunities for comedy. So, would you like to share some of the moments that you found very funny or engaging?
First, no shade to the gymnast, of course. We had a fall from Jesse Moore. He was going for a big skill from a front swing, and he just kind of slipped and ended up doing like a backwards layout, backwards roll on the P bars, and it just looked super awkward, but a little bit funny. Sorry, Jesse. and he got back up and nailed the routine. And we had another, I forgot his name. Was it Alton Dogan doing a straddle front? And he just perfectly rotated it around. So one foot stood on one of the P-bars and then tipped him over the other side of the P-bars. And that was a little bit entertaining as well.
Yeah, gymnastics is such a difficult sport, and these moments are going to come along. And I think it's important when athletes can also like laugh and chuckle at themselves. Like, of course, there are high stakes and they want to do well, but sometimes the stuff is just unavoidable. And yes, of course, no shade to any of these athletes, but also thank you for providing us with a little bit moments of comedy. Speaking of moments of comedy, the high bar final, it felt like they all got together beforehand and were like, hey, do you want to recreate the chaos of the Olympic high bar final over again? I think that this might be have contained my favorite fall of all time, which was Okashinosuke's, which we'll get to in just a moment. But we started with Heath Thorpe, and has a lovely routine, a very interesting routine. The only gymnast, I think, in this entire final that started with a Jaeger mount went through actually quite cleanly, and then went for the triple back dismount. And it's too bad you can't get bonus for triple back to forward roll, because he could have gotten some bonus points had that been in the code of points.
Yeah, he definitely ate that routine, and in brackets on his story, ate the mat. I thought that was super funny.
Yeah, another gymnast who is able to sort of like poke fun at themselves and laugh and say, like, sometimes it just doesn't go according to plan.
I think Heath will definitely get his flowers at some point soon. Everyone knows that he's a great high bar worker, and with that, he'll be adding in that def and some of those Jaeger connections. He'll definitely get his high bar flowers soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, I just a really engaging gymnast who brings like beauty and intricacy to the sport. And yes, like, go back and watch the rest of the routine. It is absolutely stunning, and I totally agree with you. I think he's going to get his flowers, get the medal sometime soon. So after Heath went up, Tansel from Switzerland went up and fell in the Coleman. Then Hashimoto gets up, who's been a world champion and an Olympic champion on this event. He ended up not connecting the talk half to Lucan in this particular routine. So he did do that connection in qualifications. He did do it in all around finals, but he fell. And so then he took it out here. And after that, he went the wrong way on his skill. I think it was the talk full that he went the wrong way on. And so he did stick his landing though, but he looked understandably upset at that routine.
Yeah, I mean, just those two mistakes alone, I think that's at least a 0.7. And I believe that he was going for the stoop half or tuck half to the Liukin, but you could see his stoop half kind of ended up a little bit to the side. And I'm sure in the moment he's not going to try Liukin out of that. So 0.2 for the misconnection, 0.5 for tactful on the wrong way, and also there's like the skew deductions. So I was pretty impressed that he scored above a 14 on this, and it just goes to show his scoring potential if he hits his routine.
100%. And again, like, we always want the gymnasts to do their best. And so many gymnasts, the talk full is what it really messes up a lot of athletes. And so many medals have been lost on this skill for going the wrong way. And it's so difficult to get the balance between not falling forward, not, going over the top and getting the angle deduction and things like that. So he ended up with a fairly decent score, but definitely not something that he lives up to his potential. So then we have Okashinosuke, who's the reigning Olympic champion on this event. And I have to say, before we get into his routine, according to the reports from inside the arena, a lot of the people left after women's floor final, which I was disgusted to find out, because how dare you leave before the event final with the last two reigning Olympic champions on the event? Like, you never get to see this type of competition outside of a world championships. I was appalled that people were leaving. I was like, how dare you? And they missed moments of comedy because Okashinosuke, I think, had the funniest fall I've ever seen in my entire life from an elite gymnast at this level. Blythe Lawrence, who was commentating along with Ollie Hogben, said that this was the epitome of an unintentional dismount. So basically, he was doing a front giant and just peeled off, would you say, and ended up, it almost looked like he was trying to do a tucked Jaeger and missed. I didn't like, did you end up laughing at, I just, for me, this was so entertaining.
Laughing out loud. Yeah, I did end up laughing out loud at this. Definitely skipping back 5 seconds a few times as well. I think I loved watching it in slow motion because you can just see like the split second that he starts to slip. He already knows how he's going to save it and what he's going to do, and he just looks like in complete control of it, which I think just makes it even funnier. Just it looks like if he didn't know any better, if I was showing that to my mum, she would have been like, "Oh, that's I haven't seen that dismount before," you know?
Right, exactly. So anyway, if you have not seen that, I highly recommend going back and watching that routine just to have a bit of a moment of enjoyment of an unintentional dismount. So after the second part of the warm up, this is when Felix Dulce of Canada goes. And can you talk to me about his routine? Because I know that you had some questions about his routine construction and why he was performing the routine the way he did.
Well, typically, if you are competing a casino like Felix is, you would probably have that earlier in your routine because that's a massive skill. That's worth G 0.7 into your difficulty score. And I understand he wants to get that tack full out of the way, and he's got that big connection, the tack half to the Coleman. But I don't know why he does his layout catchive next and then his casino. Like having a casino in your second half of the routine is crazy to me. And then not just that, but he finishes the casino and then goes back for another catchive, the straddle catchive this time. I'm just a little bit confused on the construction. I would assume personally I would do my two Kovacs kind of together and then maybe the two catchivs kind of after it, especially since they're meant to be easier skills. Maybe they're not for him, but he nailed it anyway and he got a gold. So maybe I don't know what I'm talking about.
He did. He won. He ended up, landing. And the best part of it was the way the camera was set up that you could see when Felix landed. Hashimoto is in the background, like raising his hands, clapping, like he's super happy for Felix. No, probably knowing at that point that he is going to get bumped off the top spot, but still like cheering on for this other athlete who has done so well at this point. And that was really nice to see Felix get the gold there. So the high bar podium ended up being Felix Dulce of Canada in gold, Hashimoto Daiki of Japan in silver, and He Xiong of China in the bronze medal position. So before we wrap up the podcast, I am going to do a little bit of a recap of the European Youth Olympic Festival. I am not sure who is in charge of planning major gymnastics events, but the scheduling always seems to be a little bit of an issue because we go weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and we have no gymnastics competitions. And then it seems like there's often several major gymnastics competitions happening at the same time. So this time it was the FISU World University Games and the European Youth Olympic Festival. So the big takeaways that you need to know from this competition is that basically, this was the show of the British. They won the team title. Evan McPhillips won the all-around on the floor title. User Chowdhury won the still rings and parallel bar title. It just really seemed like that they were getting almost every win. Now, there were a couple other athletes who snuck in there. So for pommel horse, there was a tie for first between Nikita Brahofev of Germany and Ben Schumacher of Switzerland. And then for vault, Chester Enrique of Ireland actually took the gold here. Earlier in the competition, he had won bronze on floor, which was the first ever medal for an Irish gymnast at the European Youth Olympic Festival. And I love when those moments happen. Those are really, really special moments. So congratulations to him and Ireland. Now, moving forward, I did a bunch of interviews with USA Gymnastics athletes ahead of the national championships. They are going to be posted on our YouTube this coming week, so make sure to check those out. Radomir Stelmach, formerly of Ukraine, currently still of Ukraine, but training in Germany, has been invited to be a guest to compete at German nationals. And this sort of like aids in those rumors that have been coming along about him trying to switch nationality to compete for Germany. So that's something else that we're keeping an eye on. And then finally, Rhys McClanagan of Ireland recently underwent shoulder surgery and is going to be out the rest of the season. So we wish him well in recovery as well. If you would like to help financially support Neutral Deductions, please consider donating. A massive thank you to Catherine for your donation this week. We are almost entirely listener supported at this point, so donations do make a difference. The PayPal link is in every show note and at the bottom of every article at neutraldeductions.com. You can donate via PayPal or Stripe. If you have any questions, comments, or insider tips, you can email us at neutraldeductions@gmail.com. That's all for this week. We'll see you next time.